This is Max Vanderwolf. The band is Vanderwolf, and you're listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast.
One, two, three, four. The Brutally Delicious Podcast. The Brutally Delicious Podcast. The Brutally Delicious Podcast. The Brutally Delicious Podcast.
Here I am.
Were you in New York today?
I'm in New Orleans today.
Oh, wow. What's down there?
Well, everything. All the good things here in New Orleans, but I'm here for
food on the mind.
Yeah, the great food, which I have already partaken in with a fabulous meal at Brennan's last night, and then it's it's Jazz Fest, so it's gigs everywhere.
I didn't know it was.
Yeah, it's all the incredible musicians that you could hope to see are performing here this week.
So are the streets packed and it's a good old time, or not so much?
It'll probably be packed toward the weekend. It was kind of chill last night, which was really nice change. It's usually too much. You could actually move down the street easily, and it was super relaxed. And then during the day, people go to the fairgrounds, which is pretty full-on event, something like 9 stages, and
oh wow,
all sorts of great musicians performing there. It's Neil Young and Crazy Horse this year, and the Rolling Stones, and then you have a wealth of local musicians. I spend a fair amount of time in the gospel tent.
Yeah.
There's a lot to see. There's a lot to catch up on. And, the tradition of local music here is really strong and very diverse. So I try to plug into that quite a bit. And then I look for the sort of weird alternative edges of the New Orleans tradition.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some great experimental music in this town as well, which is not what it's known for, because the traditional stuff is so celebrated and so dominant. But there are great musicians here who have kind of pushed the boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. So I know we didn't come and talk about New Orleans, but I've been there once or twice and I've had a blast. Never for a jazz fest, but just to see it. And definitely pre-Katrina, but it was always great when I was there.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone who visits this city needs to get back to it probably every 5 or 10 years, just to remind themselves how great it is.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Great Bewilderment. What's been the response to it so far?
Initial response I think was really great. I mean, I was having a lot of friends. I have, the first thing you do is play it for your friends. I had a lot of friends telling me it was like they thought it was the best thing I'd ever done. So that's been really great. And then, my PR teams and distribution, that's sort of the next layer of people you send it to, people you work with. They were all thrilled and couldn't wait to get moving with it. Super excited about getting it out there. And then it got out there and it got initial good reviews, but the sort of infrastructure of reviewing has collapsed greatly. And as you probably are well aware, the music press, music journalism has kind of, like everything else in the music industry, has taken a real hit. And there are less publications. There's more pay to play, if you will, in the journalism world. There's a lot less serious writing. Album reviews aren't even a big thing right now. It's more focused on, you're lucky to get like an interview and a feature piece or things like that. So real reviews are really hard to come by. A lot of the publications I was reviewed in for my last record don't exist anymore,
right?
Or a lot of aren't doing reviews anymore, and the remaining ones are double pressure to get album reviews in because there are so few of these things. Right. So it's tough. It's tough
that's
out
where
there.
That's where we fit in. I've got like 6 people on the team, and there's way more than that hitting the inbox every day. There's 30, 40 of them. Everybody wants stuff, and there's only this much time in a day. So I get it from this side as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard, and but there are people out there who actually do want to read album reviews, who do actually want to go through a trusted source that can sort of give them a steer. There are so many especially these days when there are millions of releases every month. It's good to have a trusted source sift through them and say, hey, this is the good stuff, or here's a great band and the new record isn't quite up to that, or here's a band we thought we were all tired of and they've just done the best record of their career. We need that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Times are tough. Times are tough.
Yes. So Coming Home, I've been listening to that while setting up this morning after speaking to you by email. What a great song. And it's one of those, and maybe because I'm a certain age, but I grew up like 70s, 80s. It so reminds me of like Supertramp, Styx, Boston. It's got that great big 70s vibe to it, but it's not dated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess in some ways it makes sense. I mean, I can tell you the things it reminds me of, but I'm not sure they align with you, but I love to, my favorite thing is hearing people cite things that it reminds them of, and it doesn't even occur to me. Of course, I grew up hearing all those bands just like you, but for me, there's a lot of, believe it or not, even though it's kind of a rocker. I mean, I hear a lot of Dylan in the narrative, and a kind of knocking on heaven's door Dylan. And then, I hear quite a bit of sort of 90s stuff, Jane's Addiction and Flaming Lips. Of course, I lifted a lyric out of the bridge, comes right out of the Beatles. From Abbey Road. So there's a little bit of that the bridge of the song is kind of almost a Steely Dan Beatles thing. And I have to say, Phil Loco, who was sort of guest guitarist on that one and kind of steered it into a direction, especially the back end of the song. He's a Jimmy Page freak, so I hear a lot of Zeppelin in what he brought to the song as well.
Either way, it's really big, and it definitely has lots of nods to that sort of, I guess, classic rock era, maybe? Is that the word? Hard rock, classic rock?
Yeah, also Angie on drums is she's all Nick Mason is her influences, and Keith Moon, and Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction again. You hear a lot of thunderous tribal sounding drums on this track driving it through.
It ends up with that hypnotic drum track, right? Or that hypnotic drum little intro or whatever. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So when you were writing this, I'm guessing. I'm assuming you're writing it all yourself, and then you've got the band that comes along, or how do you go about your process?
That song, I had to really just like, sometimes you just on a roll. I think I wrote about 6 songs in a house in the bottom of Laurel Canyon on Oakstone Road in Laurel Canyon. And Laurel Canyon obviously is a famous place for songwriters to vibe. And it was vibey. This house was very vibey, and it had a room that was separate from the house. And I would just go in there and play music. It was during the pandemic, and that one came up with a very natural C to G strum. It was a kind of slash chord progression I was practicing. And I could just hear the song right there. I think I pretty much went straight through and wrote that song in one session with very little stopping. The chord that opens into the bridge, that's Wichita Lineman. So I pretty much was looking for the next chord to drive it into another section. And I said, well, there's this really interesting chord from Wichita Lineman, which I've been playing. How would that sound here? And the next thing I knew, the song was, complete. And it was also one of these cases where once I wrote the song, I immediately started recording it, just home style. And yeah, always really great when you can sit down and from start to finish write the song. I don't always do that. Sometimes I write a part and I'm just like, let me sit on this a while and see if I got it here. But in that case, I wrote it all the way through, recorded it. And yeah, then when I get together with the musicians, a lot can happen. The main development I think that happened on that one, though, is in the back end of the song, and that has a lot to do with Phil on guitar. He's the one who had this idea for those octave chords you hear going up the neck. Mm-hmm. It built beautifully, and he and the bass player, Chris, had that arrangement in the back end of the song. That's kind of an idea they developed. And, I was like, yep, go guys, you got it.
How much of the lockdown pandemic seeped into this record? Because I'm assuming it's impossible to not have it, right? If that's when you wrote it.
Yeah, it really does. It's seeped into the lyrics in a lot of ways, but I think the lyrics go back pre-pandemic in some ways. I'm looking back at a lot of change, although some of that change did come with the pandemic. And in fact, Coming Home is a little bit of, I really wasn't coming home. I was really coming back to the idea of living someplace and living with someone and stopping all my wanderings, which were many, and I had been bounced around a lot over the previous 5 years to writing that song. And Coming Home is really about having a sense of place in California and feeling like, oh, I could live here. And it's really like sort of like licking my wounds and saying, hey, this is not a bad place to be. Right. And maybe I ought to just, stop running and maybe, sit down and take stock of what I got here.
So
yes.
That bit of song came from what maybe could have been negative, right? Because you were forced to settle in. There was nowhere to go.
Yeah, it did. It kind of came from the pandemic. But hold on one second. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. The pandemic really sort of pushed us into a situation where we were in the, it was lockdown. It was pure and simple, and to be in that situation in New York was very unpleasant in New York City. So, we had to get out of there. And it was pretty dark. As you can remember, the darkest days of the pandemic in New York, it was pretty hardcore.
Anyway, so record, when you're writing this, is there anything you want your fans to take away from after listening to the Vanderwolf album, or is there like a message, or you writing it for you and then letting them kind of interpret?
I do put a lot out there for the audience to interpret. I hope I'm never too dictatorial, and I try not to say too much about the literal meaning of songs. And, the truth is, like a lot of songwriters, I don't always know the meaning of a song. Oh, right. I know the emotional resonances of it. There are maybe certain lines or lyrics that I have a sense of where they came from.
Right.
They might refer to something vaguely specific, but they might not. But what I hope the audience comes away with is something of a journey and a story. I mean, there is kind of a narrative that runs through these songs, and I couldn't specifically say what that is. It's not like telling somebody a movie plot,
right?
But there is as much, my favorite records do sort of carry through song to song. You recognize, whether it's Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan, or Lamb Lies Down on Broadway by Genesis, or Diamond Dogs by David Bowie. There are these themes that you can follow through, and there are these stories that all maybe make a composite of a larger story. But I'm a little careful, even as a fan of rock opera. I'm a little careful to overfeed the audience with narrative.
Right,
it's quite tricky.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I just totally lost my train of thought here. I had a question for you on what we were just talking about.
Well, we're talking about like what the audience comes away with, and I guess I know
Oh, I know what I was going to say. You're talking about albums, songs and how they flow into each other. I love that you are talking about albums, because I think that's something that's so missing from like modern day world, right? I know the new business model is singles, and we talk about this a lot on the show, but people like me of a certain age, have that grew up with, especially with this kind of music, right? That's the music you grew up with. You sat down with the record and you listened from start to finish, how you sequenced it and the ebbs and flows and that whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my previous record, I sat on for about 7 years because I could not come up with a proper sequence for it. And for those of us who grew up with albums, album is the art form. Album is the medium. It is to take a body of music and place it together to make a singular statement is kind of the art form. That is kind of the kick of it. I mean, I got a lot of respect for, Motown and even some aspects of DJ culture, which is single bass. And, sure. I mean, the Beatles released singles. I love good singles, but to me, the album is really a defining statement of 20th century music. And it's not making it into the 21st century. It is it's a dying art form. And in fact, for the first time, I'm sorry to say, I mean, I'll be delighted to release singles, I guess, but I'm going to do a series of singles. Probably my next album will be 10 or 12 singles.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, if you want to do this for a living or make any kind of money on it, you have to, adapt to it. But I agree. Like just before I was sat down to prep for all this stuff, I was listening to Fair Warning front to back. And right. I mean, nothing like it. It's just, it sets the mood and it runs you through and it pulls you, emotions where they want you to really tune in. And it's, I don't know, it's missing that.
They placed those tracks in that sequence because they wanted you to carry through, a story, a narrative feeling. There's a reason, I don't know, there's a reason certain tracks close side A. I mean, Gaza closing side A on my record. I mean, it's just like there was no other place for that song to go, really. I definitely didn't want to close the album on it, because I felt like it was a bit of a centerpiece for the record, Gaza. I felt it kind of held more weight, although musically, perhaps you could close the album with it. So it had to close side A. I like when you flip over record and side B is kind of bright and carries you through. And that's why Love Stays Strong opens side B. There was a lot of debate about how we should open the album. And, even though we were a little bit, squeamish about opening up the album with big drums right in your face first thing.
Right.
there was a moment where it sounded just a little too in your face, and we weren't sure we wanted to make that statement straight off, but it was such a strong message. It's such a great welcome into our album song that there was no other way to really. So, like, all these albums we're talking about, whether it's, Who's Next or Zeppelin 4 or, Dark Side of the Moon, forget it. These are all like really phenomenal experiences that take 40 minutes to get through.
Yeah.
These days, people don't have 40 minutes,
They're 30 seconds.
No, it's hard to get. I see kids, they listen to 30 seconds of a song and they want to hear the next one. They don't even listen to the whole song anymore.
And it's so heartbreaking because as an artist, I'm not even a musician, but I'm sure that happens with my show too. They're listening to, the first couple minutes. But as an artist, you put you're so much work into it, right? You bleed into these stupid songs. And then for somebody to sort of be able to disregard it in 30 seconds and swipe left or right, or I don't know what the way is, it's kind of disheartening.
Yeah, it's, and it's a signal that music is it means something different to the youngest generation of people. It's kind of like a sidelined thing, or it's kind of like lacing other experiences, but it's not the main meal. It's not the main thing.
And you hit it on the head, because I remember growing up, and even now, like, you got that bug early on with whatever album you put on first. And it's been not a side dish, like you're saying. It's definitely been in my blood.
Yeah.
And with me since, whatever, 8th grade or what, I don't know when it was, really early on.
Yep.
Into my parents' Beatles collection or something, even before I got into heavy metal and all that other stuff. But it was right in you. And then you were just seeking out more and more. Yeah. And now it's, the soundtrack of my life. But I don't know if people have that anymore. I
think young people have other identifications that are much more powerful than the music they choose. Also, we were kind of divided by where you could get access to music, what you were exposed to, where now with streaming service, everyone's exposed to everything.
Right. We used to walk to the record store on Tuesday.
Yeah. And you were just like, my older brother has every Zeppelin album, and I'm going to die on this Zeppelin. And you kids over there that are listening to whatever, Boston or Supertramp, you were of different tribes. Right. I don't think that happens so much anymore. I don't think kids have video games. They have gender identifications that are more powerful for them to sort out. Music. People have video games that are very important. What games you play, where you are on roadblocks or whatever. And I just think music.
Is music going away?
What's that?
Is music going to go away then?
No, I don't think music's going to go away. Music's going to be very powerful because it's still a very powerful experience in, all the television series we see. Music plays a big role in film and television in terms of luring people in and making people, you saw what happened with Kate Bush's song. And those kind of things are going to happen again. And there are television shows that kids watch where they learn about new bands. And I do hear from friends who have young kids who do like to see live music and are going out. There are little punk rock scenes popping up here and there. I'm sure there are heavy metal scenes that are, in pockets, and you must know about those too. There's experimental music in all sorts of pockets. People are doing weird things in weird gallery spaces. I don't think music really goes away, but it's definitely not holding its position in culture as it used to. Oh. Maybe in some ways there's good things about it going back to a more folk form, where people who are doing it because it's part of their family tradition and part of their personal life more than they're out there trying to make money off it.
Right.
Because money off it is, a rare thing. And I know we can all point to examples of artists that are doing great, but those artists would be making 6 times as much money if this was 1978, or 76 or 83. Right. But, all starts to go downhill in the late 80s with the of CDs and then streaming, Napster, and then that's it. We're in a downhill spiral, and here comes AI.
Man, Lars was ahead of the ticket way back when, and everybody made fun of him, but he saw the writing on the wall, right, with that Napster crap.
Yeah, he did. And, others did too, Frank Zappa. And
right.
I mean, there were other people who were saying not going to be sustained. And, right. There also, I guess also on the back of, can remember record labels taping, killing me.
Yeah.
And there were some people who didn't a PTA mom saying this is bad for you. But it was bad for you. It was bad for the music. It was bad for musicians' livelihoods that you could just freely download whatever you wanted.
Yep.
And now nobody's in that thing.
Right. So that's going to bring me to the end of my questions, except what does this look like live for you? Are you able to get out there and play? Or is that not sustainable either?
It's really tough, but it's possible, and we are looking at certain scenarios. And there was a live thing we were planning to do in March, but it actually fell through due more to the conflicts that certain musicians had in their schedule. So we will be getting live, and hopefully people will tune into the Vanderwolf Instagram and find dates and come see us.
Sweet. That's all I had, my friend. Did I miss anything you want to cover? Where can people find you?
You can find me. Best place is probably the Vanderwolf Music Instagram, Vanderwolf Music website as well. Hit me up. Come say hello.
Sweet. Thank you, my friend. Enjoy yourself in Louisiana there.
Thank you very much. Gonna do it.
I'm glad we make it happen. Be well. Good luck.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cheers.
For later.